if anyone's ever lost a business, you can kind of relate to this when I say it. It's like a death. Like you tie your entire identity to this thing. You know, I was 21-year-old CEO, managing director. Like that was my entire identity.
Tell me, who is Amelia Sordell?
Amelia Sordell is a personal branding strategist and founder, I think is probably how I describe myself, and mum too.
Through that's tough, right? That built your resilience though, right? Early.
I'm such a big believer that failure isn't the opposite of success, it's part of it, you know? Not trying things because you're worried you're going to look stupid or you're worried you're going to fail is the opposite of actually trying to win at something.
Doctors, pioneering medicine, don't find the kid something without multiple failures.
Yeah.
But they're not talked about.
All you need to do to be successful at something is, well, probably three things. One, be delusional enough to think that you can achieve it, right? But two, take one step at a time, do one tiny thing that's going to move the needle. And then the third thing is just be wildly consistent. I'm sitting here because I've been doing this and saying the same thing for 7 years. Like literally the same thing for 7 years.
Proof it works, right?
Yeah, it's not sexy, but it works.
Okay, I get it. I've got to do this. I've got to feel the fear and do it anyway. But what's the first step to that? Welcome. You can tell I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, well, me too. It's been a long time coming.
The vibe. Yeah. Tell me, who is Amelia Sordell?
It's such a big question to start this session with. Amelia Sordell is a personal branding strategist and founder, I think is probably how I describe myself, and mum too, but all of those things.
Where did this all start then, personal branding?
It's an interesting thing. I would love to say that I look back and I knew that personal branding was going to be this big thing, like human-to-human marketing was going to be the next big thing in how to build brands and how to build businesses. But actually the reality is that I had a business when I was 21 and I learned very, very quickly that my customers were buying my products because I was showing up on Instagram. I was the one that was posting things on Facebook. I was the one wearing the clothes that I was selling. And when that business failed spectacularly in year 2.
What was the business?
It was a clothing brand.
Okay.
And it was really good. Like for 21 years old, I had like Colleen Rudy wearing our stuff. I had Danielle Lloyd wearing our stuff. And back then they were like the people. This was pre-influencers, you pay someone a couple of grand and they take pictures in your clothes. This was like getting papped in the Daily Mail and your brand being tagged. So I was like, oh, made it. Like 21, I'm like absolutely doing well here. And that hubris then led to the business kind of closing in year 2. And during the kind of grieving process, which if anyone's ever lost a business, you can kind of relate to this when I say it. It's like a death. Like you tie your entire identity to this thing. You know, I was 21-year-old CEO, managing director. Like that was my entire identity. And so I spent some time grieving. And after my mum kind of gave me a bit of a pep talk of like, you can't live at home forever. I remember going online and I Googled, what is the one thing you can do with the least amount of experience that's going to pay you the most amount of money? And recruitment is what came up. So I went and did that. And applied a lot of the knowledge that I'd learned through that failed business to my approach to recruitment, which was people aren't working with me as a recruiter because the company I work for is a big brand. People are working with me as a recruiter because I'm really good at my job and because they know who I am. So instead of following the normal route, which was make 1,000 calls a day and hope for the best, I started posting content and started getting CEOs of really large businesses coming to me, and very, very quickly went from rookie recruiter to team lead in about 12 months and billing more than, my peers who were 3, 4, 5, 6 years, 10 years in than I was, just by posting content. And that was my kind of introduction to personal branding.
I love that. So there was probably a real sense of associated identity with the business that failed. And I get that. That's something that I talk to other people in the chair, if you like, and coming through that's tough, right? That built your resilience though, right? Early.
I'm such a big believer that failure isn't the opposite of success, it's part of it, Not trying things because you're worried you're going to look stupid or you're worried you're going to fail is the opposite of actually trying to win at something. All the people that you see that are successful, whether it's like, idolize Elon Musk or Richard Branson or sports people or, whoever it might be, none of these people have anything different than you. They just had the desire and I guess being okay with being embarrassed, with potentially failing. And look, like when you try something, you either get a good outcome or a good story, right? And I've now got a really good story that I can tell people. Like I had this business that failed. So, yeah, it's something that's taken a while to learn.
Yes.
But I think failure is absolutely the pathway to success.
Really important, isn't it, to share that, and that whole test and learn. Scientists don't suddenly find the cure to something, or doctors pioneering medicine don't find the cure to something without multiple failures.
Yeah.
But they're not talked about.
Of course
Because
not,
but it's all part of So using that kind of sexy analogy in social media, I've got 2 daughters growing up. I want to bring it in early because you're a role model to so many women and so many business people, men and women, me included. Your content is inspiring and you put yourself out there in a vulnerable way on social media. And I want to almost capture that whole kind of like, how difficult was that for you to do at the beginning? And back to that person, it's like, oh, which is me at times still, and many other people.
Do you know what's really funny? I have friends who are like some of the most well-known entrepreneurs in this country. Like I'm talking 15 million followers, right? Everyone knows who these people are. And they still are like, ooh, when something goes out there. And I have this conversation often, they'll be looking through, comments that they've had being like, this person didn't like my content. I'm like, why do you care? Like you've built this entire media empire off the back of your personal brand. Why do you care what one person from Colchester thinks? Like it doesn't matter. But I only have that confidence because I had the courage to just do it. One of the questions I get asked the most, to kind of tee back off of what you just said, is how did you get so confident? Like, where did you get the confidence to start? You share everything, where does that come from? And to be honest, it comes from just doing it. Like you don't get confident in anything, whether it's posting content, building a business, being a parent, being a good partner, being a good husband, a good wife. You don't get the confidence to do those things by reading a book on how to get confident or, following some 6-step program. You get confident in those things by repeatedly going at something and sucking at it until you get good at it. And so my confidence to kind of just come here and be like, I had a failed business, like I've had a failed marriage, like here's all my mess ups, is because I've been through it, I've shared those, and I didn't die when I did. So I'm like, okay, cool, we can talk about this and nothing terrible is going to happen. And that in itself just creates a confidence in yourself, in what you're doing, in your beliefs, etc. And so anyone who's like feeling not confident in something, I think don't avoid doing the thing you're not good at yet. Just go all in on it, even when you're sucking, because the embarrassment of not being good at something yet is the entry fee to being successful at it.
Love that. There's so much already in this conversation. People buying people, understanding that you vibe off people. And then the whole kind of, what I love is that you pioneered something that worked for you, that gave you an empowerment, a fulfillment to also then be successful in business. But now you pass that on to so many other people. Literally in this conversation as well, people thinking, oh, okay, this is good information. But you've got to do it yourself. So on that, like someone watching, listening to you now thinking, okay, I get it. I've got to do this. I've got to feel the fear and do it anyway. But what's the first step to that? Because actually sometimes that's the bit, you've read the book, you've listened to Amelia, but it's like, okay, I'm going to do this. And then it's the freeze. Can you talk through those first steps that might get you easing into it? Or is it just do it, just go?
Do you know what? It's so easy to listen to someone being like, just go for it, because that takes all of the nuanced emotions out of it, right? It makes it very linear of like, if you want to get from A to B, you just have to go to B, right? But actually we're all human, and there is a human experience that we all go through, whether it's being a first-time parent or going and asking that person on a date or hitting post on that first bit of content, or like going and asking a bank for a loan to start a business and being told, like, these are all new experiences and we all have emotion attached to them. I think anyone that says that business is not personal has never built a good business. Like, of course business is personal. Of course the content you share is personal. Of course you're going to feel embarrassment, scared, fear, all of these things when you do something new, because you're a human being. And if you didn't feel those things, I'd argue you probably need to go see a therapist. But in terms of the first step, like, just do one thing that's going to move you towards the goal, right? So when I first started posting content as a reference point, I didn't start posting content with the view that I'm going to have 400,000 followers and millions of views every month, and I need to be posting 7 times a week. Or when I first started my business, I didn't have these grand plans of I'm going to make a multi-million-pound business and I'm going to exit and all these things. I just wanted to do something that I loved and get paid. With my content, I just wanted to share something that I thought was interesting. And that was like step one. And I think a lot of people, particularly in business, and I'm sure there's lots of people listening to this who are operating businesses or, working at a high level within one. We all get told you need to have a 5-year plan, a 3-year plan. Like, what is your goal for the next 12 months? actually, I think that's often counterproductive because it gives you the big picture thinking, which is really important, whether you're building a personal brand or building a business or building a relationship. But it doesn't give you the way to get there. There is no map that you've got to go from A to Z. You're just expected to see the big thing and be like, right, let's aim in that direction. All you need to do to be successful at something is, well, probably three things. One, be delusional enough to think that you can achieve it, right? But two, take one step at a time. Do one tiny thing that's going to move the needle. If it's posting content, you're trying to build a personal brand. Okay, today, maybe optimize your LinkedIn profile. Today, maybe set up an Instagram account. Today, maybe write some thoughts down. That's one step towards where you're trying to get. And the third thing is just be wildly consistent. I'm sitting here because I've been doing this and saying the same thing for 7 years. Like literally the same thing for 7 years.
Proof it works, right?
Yeah, it's not sexy, but it works. And, you know, I've built a multi-million-pound business off the back of it. I've, you know, changed my life. And I say that when people say they've changed their life, I think sometimes you kind of go, oh yeah, fine. But like, I've literally changed my life. I went from living paycheck to paycheck, you know, saving up all year to go on a 2-week holiday and then doing it all again the following year, to doing what I want, when I want, with who I want, getting invited to incredible things like this, meeting incredible people like you, just because I had the audacity to start and have had the discipline to be consistent enough to keep doing it.
Love that. Love that. Love that it's working so well. That's inspiration for anyone watching or listening. The piece about personal brand. So it's almost like zeitgeist timing, you said, but it's always been there. Richard Branson, as an individual, has been a personal brand in my life, if you like, forever, but never really thought of it as like.
I mean, Jesus has got a personal brand. We all read his book.
so totally, that's an interesting viewpoint, but you're right, we all do, right? So what is your definition of personal brand?
I think personal branding gets a pretty bad rap because when people hear the word personal branding, they assume one of two things. One, it's a really ego-driven activity, and you know, people who are building their personal brand only want attention, right? And two, people think that it's really personal. So you need to share your innermost thoughts and feelings and diary entries with the world in order to create something meaningful. And actually, personal branding to me is the content part and the social media part is such a small element of building a personal brand. You know, a personal brand is how you greet people when you first meet them. Do you shake their hands? Do you look them in the eye? Do you have a floppy little wet handshake? Or if you really practice to like grab someone's hand and like have some force in there. You know, when you see the barista who made your coffee this morning, did you say thank you? Do you remember people's names? You know, all of these things make up your personal brand. How you communicate on email, how you dress, you know, even when I show up in certain pieces of my content, I will intentionally dress down because there is a certain angle I'm trying to reach with the people that I'm trying to speak to. All of these things form your personal brand. So if you want to kind of, I guess, encompass it in a simple statement, your personal brand is just your reputation at scale. It's the thing that people are talking about in association to you when you're not in the room. And that is so far beyond just posting content on a social media platform.
That's brilliant. I love that. It goes back to upbringing, it goes back to role models, goes back to how you're interacting with people, because that's aspirational for people as well. So there's an element of what you can guide and show, leading by example, and then the content you put out. But also we can all watch people, see how they're interacting, and go, I like the way that was done or how that was said, and then I can bring that into my way of being. My point being, you can evolve it and kind of bring that consistency in where that's something I'm going to be accountable for or I'm going to show up for.
And what you just said there is such an overlooked part of this, right? I think when people say, like me, like you need to build your personal brand, like take control of your destiny, whatever, people go, oh my God, like I need to create original stuff and I have no original ideas. Where I first started, I just went and looked at other people that I found really interesting. Like, you know, mentioned Richard Branson. He's the GOAT of this. Like, he's amazing. Gary Vee, I've been following him for years. He's been doing this for 20 plus years. You know, politicians, they've all have entire teams around them to build strong personal brands to, you know, appeal to a particular electorate, right? So go and look at people that you find inspiring, interesting, the way they communicate, and try and kind of learn from them. Obviously, you're never going to be someone else, and you should never try and be anyone else.
And if you see something you like, you can take that and think that.
Why wouldn't you?
And if you see something you like, it's because you've worked out from an empathetic point of view. It should work with me. I like that. Yeah.
Of course. And I think, like I always say, but to create, you need to consume. So if you want to create anything, whether it be a new business, whether it be a piece of content, whether it be, you know, I don't know, like a drawing, you need to be inspired by something. No one has ever just come up with an idea by sitting in a, an office building with like a computer. Like you get these ideas sitting under a tree, Newton, or going for a walk, or listening to a podcast, reading a book. Like you have to get inspiration from somewhere. And if there's people that you've come across who've got strong personal brands, maybe they're business owners who has built something really spectacular and like, wow, like I would love to do that. Why wouldn't you go and get inspired from what they're doing and what they're saying? And then whatever it is that sparked in you from reading or engaging with that type of content, then that can be the kind of beginning part of what you want to share.
I love that, because actually what you're encouraging there is curiosity, which I think aligns us particularly. I am so full of questions for you, for life, for anything, because in any one way I'm asking something to potentially be a better version of myself. And I think if you lose that, if you haven't got that, you're ultimately not growing. I think it's probably quite a British thing. What you just said there really piqued my interest about the whole kind of selfish element of personal brand. That's not important.
She thinks she is.
Yes, and there's two things there. There's the personal individual. So it's like, I don't want to talk about me and who cares and all this. And then there's the fact that I'm trying to grow a business, which of course you sit right in the middle of. So if I had a business now that I'm trying to grow, get sales for, amplify, how important is my personal brand to the business? Because I might be someone looking at this going, well, this isn't for me, or I don't need to do that. But actually you could reframe that. Well, it's a huge part of the business that you could be missing.
I think there's two sides to this. One is, if you're the founder of a business, who best to promote it? Like if you're unwilling to promote your own business, then why are you running one? You can't employ people. You can't employ a marketing team and expect them, particularly at the beginning stages of a business, to understand your customer and understand why you started doing this better than you can. Like it's just impossible. The second part of this is you don't have to build a personal brand. Like there are plenty of business models that I know that don't need one. So for example, like a regional cleaning service. Like if someone came to me and said, I'm trying to build a franchise, a regional house cleaning service, like should I build a personal brand? I'd be like, why don't you just go and knock on doors? You have a 1,500 person, radius of people. If you can get 500 of those people to be your customer, you've got a cracking business. You don't need to post on social media to do that. However, what I would argue is going and knocking on doors and greeting people and shaking their hand and looking into the whites of their eyes is personal branding. So however which way you frame this, if you're the founder of a business, you have to be the face of it. If we look at all successful businesses, whether it's Dell, Apple, Microsoft, Spanx, Tala, Nike, Gymshark more recently, all of these businesses have a face, and the face is the founder, because the founder is the person who solved the problem, which is why the business exists. So I think if you're just getting started and you think particularly if you're a Brit, I feel like I'm half British, so I can kind of dog the Brits out a little bit.
Like you get a perspective there. That's why I actually said, because actually with the Aussie bit as well, right?
I've got what I would call the unearned confidence of an Australian. Like,
love that.
Like Aussies are just generally pretty confident. Like we're pretty, I would say we're kind of like the cousins of the Brits and the Americans. We kind of straddle sort of the sense of humor of the Brits, but like have the unearned confidence of Americans, right? Like they
love that.
So we I can come at it from both angles. But I think if you're in the UK or even anywhere and you're thinking, gosh, like who am I to be doing this? Like, of course you should be doing this, because who else? If not you, who else? Because no one is going to talk about your business in the way that you can talk about your business. And I really, really feel that human to human marketing is the way that we are going. Why do you think brands spend $250 billion a year on social media? It's to humanize their brands. 97% of that, by the way, produces zero ROI. Zero. So, and there's another statistic as well that came out at the end of last year that said that 80% of people would rather buy from a founder who they followed online. So more and more, we're seeing brands, consumers, people wanting to buy from people. It's always been that way. But now we can do it at scale because we have access to social media and we can reach millions of people instead of just one.
So this brings authenticity into the conversation. You exude it, like you are just raw you. And you're doing that now, fully present with me, but also I saw some of your content where you're at the wheel of your car, obviously parked up.
With my eye patches.
Yeah. But it's just, this is my point, it's vulnerability. And that vulnerability is so strong. You use your word confident as well, but you can feel it's built confidence. So I want to relate that to whether it's me, who still struggles with that, or anyone watching, listening, who gets that the vulnerability piece is actually possibly the content that goes furthest. People are craving authentic, particularly with AI now. I look on my Instagram and now I'm sort of doubting whether this is even real or not. So how important is that authenticity piece, and to be vulnerable that gives that strength?
There's two sides to this. I think to build a really strong personal brand, particularly as a founder, you don't necessarily need to be private. Like I don't ever share photos of my kids. And if I do, I block their face out. Not because, I think it's bad not to do or to do. It's just that I didn't ask them whether they wanted to be on social media. This is my career choice, not theirs. When they're old enough to make that decision, they're more than welcome to do so. I don't necessarily show you my car or like where I live or whatever, because I'm not trying to be an influencer, although everyone has influence. I think if you're just getting started with this process, you need to look at your personal brand as, for example, when we first met, we bonded over the fact that you've got 2 girls and I've got 2 kids. And, we had a moment before we started recording when I was like, how's that going? Because teenage girls is pretty wild.
And you knew what you were asking, right?
Yeah, of course, because we have a shared lived experience. And the reason why sharing vulnerability, and to your point, you referred to the video I shared with literally eye patches under I've just come back from dropping my kids from school, and I've got not a scrap of makeup on my face, and that had 250,000 views. And all of my videos that I share that follow a similar pattern, no makeup, hair up, whatever, always do really well. And I think that's because people watch those videos and they listen, to you talking about your daughters, and they go, me too. And that's what you're trying to
Relatability.
Yeah, affinity. You're trying to get people to go, me too. And the more you can kind of capture that in people's hearts, the more they trust you, the more they like you, and therefore the more they want to buy from you. Brands spend billions trying to get trust from their customers. Why do you think TripAdvisor exists? Why do you think Trustpilot exists? We have rating systems because we don't trust brands, but we do trust our peers that we've never met before in our life. So why wouldn't you leverage that to promote your business?
That makes so sense. You articulated that beautifully. Humanizing you, just thinking about that post you did, the patches under your eyes and so on.
Great patches, by the way.
Yeah. You're super busy. So thank you for making time for this, right? But that element of what becomes, I guess, the word success, and we'll come to that in a minute. There's a lot talked about in books, podcasts, conversations with successful people, where you got to get up crazy early. You got to get up and do a workout, run a marathon, read a book before 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Where do you sit with that?
Look, I think it's all a personal choice. I've got friends who get up at 10 a.m., roll out of bed. They've got no responsibilities. They probably drink too much coffee, exercise, of course, but they are the opposite of what we're told to be if you want to be successful. And
quite refreshing to hear that.
Yeah, right? They're making millions. Like if there was one way to do it, then we would all be billionaires, right? Like if everyone that got up at 5 a.m. was successful, we wouldn't need to be listening to this, right? I think you've got to work out what works best for you. But what works best for me is I'm an early up, early to bed. Anytime I go to sleep late, I am exhausted and it just ruins me for the next day. But what I will say is, we've discussed about, we both have ADHD. I was diagnosed as an adult. Not that I lead too much with that, because I feel like ADHD to me is not really a thing that I have. It's just who I am. And I think for me anyway, and I'm not saying to anyone to do this also, but for me, labeling it as that is almost like I've got something wrong with me. And I don't think I've got anything wrong with me. I think I'm great. So I don't need.
It's not an excuse.
No, it's not an excuse.
Not a label to attach to anything.
Correct.
And you've learned to cope with it.
I also think when you have, certainly for me, when you get told that you have something, you then go down a rabbit hole of research of like all the things that make you less normal with that thing. And then you're like, oh, so I can't be organized. I can't be this. I can't be that. And that almost manifests itself. Like thoughts are very powerful things. Whereas I'm the opposite. I'm like, I can hyper focus on something. I can do probably 3 hours work, and that is the same amount of work that someone else would do in a week. I don't have a normal working schedule. I start work at 10 a.m. because I want to, before work, be able to get all my kind of life min done, my workout, get the kids to school, like all of this kind of stuff. And that's what works for me. But it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to go online and be like, if you want to be successful, you need to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and spend 5 to 7 answering emails because that's when no one else is awake. Like, sure, works for me, but you might think that's living hell.
No, I get it. And I know consistency is a word you've used already.
Yeah.
Every morning?
Yeah, pretty much, even on the weekends. And it works because my partner also gets up really early and also goes to bed really early.
I'm the same.
Yeah, and so we I feel like it would be trickier if one of us was like a late bird and the other one wasn't, but we're both in sync, so it works really well.
It's a bit of a personal question, this, but it's something we're not that far from Christmas, so we're filming first week of Feb, right? So that breaks, no day's the same for either of us, right? I get that. So and we both thrive off being busy. and lots of different things and things to look
Rather
forward
busy
to.
than bored.
Yes, and we both interact with people all the time. So I think where do you fit where you can't do that morning routine and you can't set yourself up? For example, you weren't well over Christmas.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that?
So we were just saying earlier when we jumped in here that I prided myself on never really taking sick days. I think my entire life I'd taken like 3 sick days total. So I was like, badge of honor, like I never get sick. Have the immune system of a stray dog. I was so unwell over Christmas. I had to take a full 2 weeks off pretty much. And that wasn't like I'm going on vacation, so let me just tee everything up. That was, you are now forced to be in bed. You are like so unwell that you can't even have the lights on, and life comes at you very fast in those kind of situations. I thrive on routine, and as you said, like consistency is really important to me, but I'm also aware that life doesn't operate like that way. You know, that old adage, you know, you make plans and God laughs at them, right? So you just got to roll with it. And also when you've got young kids and Christmas and in-laws and parents and whatever, like life just happens. I think if you're too rigid in your routine and you know being ill is going to throw you off your game, like you got to build some resilience, dude. Like, you know, that's life. You got to roll with it. And it's something that I'm working with my daughter on a lot at the minute. She's 8 going on 18. The sass of a teenage girl in a tiny little body. But she's really struggling at the minute because she's really, really high achiever. Like she's got what I call high achiever syndrome. She either burns out or she gets bored. Like she's always striving to be top of her class, not because there's any pressure at home. We're just like chill out, but she really loves praise and she loves, you know, achieving something. And she was crying in the bathroom this morning because, you know, she got a bad mark on one of her tests and like that's unusual for her and she doesn't know how to deal with that. And I said, you know what, like you just have an off day sometimes, like it's fine. And she's like, yeah, but you know, and I'm like, no, but nothing. Like, you know, things happen. That's life. You've got to learn that sometimes things don't go your way, no matter what you prepare for, and just go again next time. Like, just make sure the next day is better than the last one, and that's it.
Yeah, mega life lessons to be learning at 8 from someone like yourself who's not just her mum.
Well, I wish I knew that when I was 8.
But isn't it amazing you know that now and have sort of stress tested that with so many clients and people that have also then been able to raise their game to be able to pass that on as a parent. And on that, just where the education system lacks in so many life skills.
How long have you got?
Exactly. We can agree on that and almost park it, right? So on that, we're home tutoring our 2 teenage daughters, yeah. And so the academic side of things, they can learn that through the teachers. But so much of what you kind of help clients with, helping me in this conversation and pass on to your daughter, are things that aren't taught in school. At what point would kind of the personal brand, the building your confidence, the consistency element almost be like a part of the curriculum, if you like, and brought it in early? Because these are all things that make us grow as people.
100%. I actually think these things should be taught from like 8, 7, 8 years old. You know, I read something recently that said that you form your relationship with money from when you're 7 or 8 years old. So why are we not teaching like kids, like tiny kids, about cash? Like, you need to be learning these things. Otherwise you get to 21 years old and you don't understand anything. I think we don't give kids enough credit for how smart they are and how switched on they are and how much they can understand about things. I think we think because they're children, we need to shield them from the real world because God forbid they should understand what that is before we're ready really for them to understand that. But actually these are things they should be learning. They should know that, everything you do and say and wear and your behavior corresponds to how people perceive you, and therefore you should probably be a nice person that says please and thank you. Others people might not want to hang out with you and not want to, sit next to you and all of these things. These are all basic skills that I think most parents would, of course, teach their children to say please and thank you, but we don't really teach them why. Like, why should you want pocket money? Why should you be saving that and maybe not spending it all on the 18 Lagami pens that you're currently obsessed with? I don't know. Your girls are probably a bit over the age of the Lagami pen era, but my kids are currently full in the obsession that is currently plaguing everyone in primary school, which are these pens. So that is currently the currency.
I have escaped that one, but I have my own. There was something
whatever
before
version,
it, right?
Yeah, of course. There's always a version of this thing, and we're currently in that. So we're kind of using that, I guess, as leverage to teach the kids about things. But mortgages, tax returns, why it's better for you to have a self-investment, obviously I'm not a financial advisor, but have a self-invested pension, all of these things you should know.
Yeah.
interest, why you should try and pay off your mortgage. There's lots of advice around there about, get really long mortgages, get interest free, but you do realize that the lump sum of that interest is paid in the first 5 years. So if you keep remortgaging, you're never going to pay it off. Like, these are all things that kids need to know about, but we don't teach them because we're like, oh, they can learn about that when they're an adult. It's too late by then. It's too late.
It does feel like, I hope that's changing in some way, because kids are growing up so much quicker now, and the advancements of tech and social media is amplifying that for me. They're smart kids out there. They have access to information we never had access to, right? Probably certain stuff they really shouldn't. But the point is, if you're a kid growing up and you've got access to tech, you can teach yourself
pretty much
so
anything.
much. And I think that also then needs to be, in any way, the role model piece comes back to me. Like, you should be right out there, not just as in the business space, but imagine you in school.
Well, I'm trying to.
I mean, you'd be amazing.
I'm trying to. So I've reached out to a few universities and also secondary schools, being like, can I come and talk to students about this, because I think it's really important. So we're trying to get that done. It's on our radar.
So I'll have a chat with you off camera about that, because I think the education curriculum, if you like, is archaic, and there's a whole piece there.
100%. Well, 70% of employers now say a personal brand is more important than a resume. So if you're not teaching children how to show up in an interview and how to showcase their skills in the best format possible online, then how are you going to expect them to get the jobs that you're so telling them to get? So
that's a whole nother conversation, because I know people, particularly in hospitality, where the kids that came through COVID, that are now late teens, 20s, going for jobs, are so mentally kind of scarred from what was such a difficult time.
I bet.
Their communication skills are not great.
Social anxiety, and
that's their personal brand.
100%.
They might have flown through their exams and there's a CV, but if you can't,
no one's going to hire them.
Yeah, and this goes back to kind of how you greet the barista. Well, the barista himself, or her the waitress, is also giving her personal brand to welcome you to the restaurant, to welcome you to the hotel.
Something that I talk about often in this situation is 10-second conversations. So, I employed with Clout a lot of younger, I don't want to say kids because they're all, adults, but, people who left university during COVID and therefore hadn't got the cutting of the teeth moment that you and I would have got in an office, that navigating the politics and what. Like that, it was rough, definitely, but it gave
life skills, right?
Life skills, right? Learning how to navigate situations, difficult conversations, negotiations, all of these things you learn by osmosis by just being in that setting. And when you haven't had that because we were in lockdown, it's very, very difficult to then expect those people to be able to show up in the way that the rest of us expect you to show up. So something that I used to speak about a lot with the team was having 10-second conversations. So if you have social anxiety, or your kid has, communication issues perhaps, and you're worried about them getting a job, just encourage them to go and have 10-second conversation. So that might be when you're in a restaurant, try and hold a conversation with that waitress or waiter for 10 seconds. So when they greet you and say, hi, how you doing? Instead of just being fine, you're like, how are you doing? Oh, I'm great, thank you. Have you had a good day? That's all you need to ask. And, we were talking about consistency and just taking one step at a time. That tiny little action will build so much confidence. I can't even tell you,
Brilliant advice.
One of my team members was really lacking in confidence, was very good at her job, but really lacking in confidence in speaking to clients. So I gave her the homework of every time she went into a store to buy something, whether it was coffee or, clothes, ask for a discount. She was like, I can't do that. I was like, yeah, you can, why not? And she was like, because they'll say no. And I'm like, well, there you go. You're either going to get a discount or a no. Either way, you've won, right?
You might get a surprise.
Yeah.
How you get growth.
And,
right?
Every 4 times she would get a yes, and she'd get a discount or a free croissant or whatever it might be. But the confidence that built in her to hear no all the time, she was night and day different within about 3 months.
Brilliant advice. God, that's got my brain spinning. I'm so conscious of time. I don't want this conversation to end. I think you already know this, but with the success that you have achieved through all your different business interests, with Clout particularly, how do you define success now?
Do you know what's really interesting? So if you'd asked me 3 years ago, I would have said, I want a big house, I want a G-Wagon, I want to be able to fly business class everywhere. I'd taken my kids on really nice holidays a few times, and that felt really like I've made it moments, because I mentioned earlier, saving up for a year to go on a 2-week holiday, and now all of a sudden I can be like, right, kids, should we go away on Easter? That was a wow moment. Making loads of money was great, but now, 3 years on, probably making less than I was at that time. I spend so much time with my kids. You know, my weekends, I'm sure I'm dropping in emails and I'm doing bits and bobs, because I think if you're running a business, I mentioned it earlier, of course it's personal. So I can't just switch off at Friday to Sunday, because I love what I do and I want to be involved in what I'm doing. I don't
That's
want
not
to.
work.
No, it's not. Of course it's not work. It's play. Like this is so fun for me. Like
100%.
this is ridiculous that this is my job. Like I'm so grateful every single day that I love what I do. And success to me now is exactly that. It's doing what you want with who you want when you want. It's not, I can do this and I've got this. It's actually how you feel. And I think if you feel wealthy, then you are. It was really nice actually, before we started recording, my girlfriend, who's a new friend, I've only met her 2 years ago, but a very good friend, sent me a voice note and she said, I just wanted to let you know that when I first met you, I really loved you, but you know, you were we had different things that we were aiming for. You know, you really wanted to build this big business and you really wanted to exit and you had these big, grand, ambitious plans. And I loved that for you. But she said, the woman you are today, I'm so proud of, because you're going for those things, but you also know what's actually a priority. Like your family is a priority. You having fun is a priority. You prioritizing our relationship and our friendship is a priority. Whereas before, I think you were much more hell-bent on proving everyone wrong. And now you know you don't need to. And that was like one of the nicest voice notes I've ever had.
Good friend. And
Yeah,
do you know what's great as well is you're a really good friend to her, because that, without being arrogant, that comfort, contentment that you've got from doing what you want, when you want, with whom you want, rubs off.
Yeah.
You're good company. That translates into business. I would listen to you. I would take your advice from a business point, because there's no faking it. There's no kind of telling me, but like, does she really believe that?
Yeah.
Doesn't feel the vibration, doesn't feel. That's very consistent with you as Amelia and into the business advice, because you're living a life that you've chosen and you've crafted and crafting.
And wow, isn't that success?
Yeah, best answer. Thank you.
Thank you.